thank you all for what you've done so far. As I said, this is the formal opening of the event, which is really tomorrow. That's the full day. But as you all know, we've already had a packed day of activities around the working groups, and we've had all 6 of the TTF working groups have met. All 6 have had really useful conversations today. So we've had meetings for the UTMC group. We've had meetings for smart parking, the masterminds, the mobility as a service group, the data group, the EV charging infrastructure group, and Spatula, which you're all here for this morning, the connected vehicle group. Those groups really are the engine room of what TTF is here to do. They're the place where we meet and talk about specific technologies. And as all of you will have seen this morning in Spatula and in the various groups you will have been in today, that's where the real debate about how we will use technology to deliver better local transport really happen. That's where we start to bring suppliers and local authorities and consultants together to really dig down into some of the areas that we need to talk about. And the working groups are also the way that TTF generally will produce material of interest. The TTF is nothing if we don't produce things that people want, if we don't produce guidance and reports and evaluation of good stuff that's happening out there and talk about the good things that are happening, and the groups will do that. And I know each of the groups has a strategy. I know you've all been talking today, and I know there are things developing and things have been going on in the past to understand what the groups do. And I think what the groups really do is get down to the nitty-gritty and start to produce guidance that's useful for the local authorities out there. I think it's great to see so many of you here. It's great to see so many local authorities here. It's great, as Steve just proved, that there were so many new faces in the room. I think that's fantastic. But there are still far more people out there who haven't been to a TTF event, and there are still far more authorities out there who are not coming to things like this that we need to engage with. We need to engage with them for my benefit. We need to engage with them because if we don't engage with them, we don't deliver some of the wider policy aims we have around decarbonisation, equitable access to the transport network, supporting economic growth, all those other things. We don't do that if we don't get local authorities thinking about technology. I think the suppliers around the room would agree that we need to engage with local authorities because they need someone to sell stuff to. And they need to sell the right things that do the right job, that ensure that investment looks sensible and is repeated. We need to ensure that people are buying the right tools for the right jobs. We need to ensure that people understand what technology can do. There are very few people out there in local authorities who buy technology because they like technology. They buy it because it meets a policy imperative. It meets some aspiration of their elected members, of their citizens. And it's important that we, through the working groups, we draw those lines between the types of technology, the types of policy that people want to deliver and the types of technology that we're able to offer and the things that we're able to develop. And I know all the groups have been doing really good stuff around that. And some of the groups are really well developed. As I say, Spatula this morning was an amazing display of the amount of things that are going on in connected vehicles across the field. And I think the thing that really impressed me about that was the fact that in the past where we've had discussions about what we might be able to do and concepts, this morning it was very much more about pictures of stuff happening, videos of stuff happening, pictures of screenshots of websites that have been developed. It's really moving forward. Some of the other groups are just starting out. So the UTMC Development Group, which has been around for a long while now, for nearly 20 years, well, probably over 20 years, as an entity, is now becoming part of the TTF as a way to support it and ensure it grows. The same is true of the Data Group, which is replacing an initiative that many of you may be aware of, the Transport Data Initiative, the TDI, which has run for a number of years. That, again, is now becoming part of the TTF. And that offers these groups real opportunities to become part of this family and to part of this sharing of information, that they don't sit in their own silo, they become part of a bigger thing. The MAS group, Masterminds, is a group that was set up, self-started by local authorities interested in mobility as a service. It's a great initiative, and we're really pleased that we're now able to help support that because, again, that is something that will grow in interest. It's something that a small number of authorities are expert in, and most authorities are not, but will need to be. And having a group that's thinking about that we can talk about, and we can start to understand the narrative and talk about the stories around mobility as a service and what that means, is an absolutely great thing to do. The EV charging group, the electric vehicle charging infrastructure group, is another recent one that started last autumn with a meeting down at Polestar Cars in Milton Keynes. And again, is about saying there are some local authorities out there that are really good at understanding what EV charging infrastructure means, and there are lots that aren't, but it is something that we will all need to understand. So that's a great group. That's a really useful thing that, again, will help deliver that. And will help bring together some quite diverse worlds of local authority highway engineers, district network operators, the electric companies, the vehicle providers, to start to have the conversations in one room that previously we haven't had. And that's the type of thing we need to do. I think we will all agree that transport delivery and technology will become more diverse. It will become less something that exists just as a transport engineering discipline, and it will start to increasingly include disciplines such as cyber, such as better understanding of data, how you integrate complex systems, how you think about much more complex engineering solutions. And I think to do that, we need to get everybody together in rooms, and we need to be talking about that. We need to be producing the right guidance, and that's the benefit of the TTF. And I hope you've all found that. So that really is what the TTF is here to do, and that really is the benefit of it. So I'm so pleased that so many of you have been here. I'm so pleased that the sessions today have been useful. I'm also so pleased they're over, because believe me, organising an agenda that has 4 things happening simultaneously in different rooms with different people in different places isn't easy. And I'm definitely waiting for that beer once this session's over. So again, thank you all for making it work so smoothly. So now, in an incredibly circular piece of theatre, I would like to ask the 6 chairs of the groups. So I'd like to ask the 6 chairs to occupy the 6 chairs, please. Thank you. So hopefully you all know who you are. Yep, here we go. So what I would like them to do, I would like them to just to come up for a few minutes, unscripted, nothing serious, just come along and just give us a quick few minutes introduction to their group, what they talked about today, what the highlights were, what they're planning to do, just really so that we all understand what's happening across the groups. And I think this is partly to allow them to shout about what they're doing, because they're all doing really great things, but it's also an opportunity for you to work out which other groups you might be interested in. And after today, because none of the groups are here just for today, they are all continuing, they have plans and agendas to move forward. They all have developing sections of the TTF website where they'll be posting material. So this is an opportunity for you to decide which of these groups are of interest to you and which you think can be useful to you. So please listen to what they've all been doing. Please make notes, and please try and think about where you may well fit into this. So I think we'll start from this end. So Shamala, do you want to come up and give us a quick overview of what you did in EV charging? Thank you.
Yeah.
And just quickly introduce yourself as well before you start.
Yeah. So I'm Shamla Evans-Gadgil from Coventry City Council. I'm chairing the Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Working Group. And this is our second meeting. Like Darren said, we met at Polestar in September. And one of the clear mandate from that particular meeting was that we provide or develop a starter guide for local authorities on how to start this journey, because there are a lot of local authorities who haven't started yet. So looking at what strategies and what challenges they've got, where to go for information, because there is a lot of information available and very large, hefty documents from a guidance perspective. So creating a starter guide was the first mandate, and today was a meeting just to find out, from the comments and views and input from the wider working group. So I'm pleased to say that it went quite well, and we will be hopefully, once we've got the comments and input from other members of this group, we will hopefully publish this document at some point in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamala. All good stuff. In our first change to the roster, Steve George, who chaired the UTMC group this morning, has had to leave early, so we have a late substitute, Mark Cartwright, who's been involved in this for longer than some people in the room have been alive, I would imagine. Yes. Just to big you up and make you feel
I thought I'd start with a bit of audience participation, but I think that would probably be unkind to both of us. If I were to ask who's familiar with UTMC, I expect quite a lot of hands would go up. If I were then to lean forward and say, all right, who's really got a decent understanding of UTMC, I suspect the number of hands going up would be a lot lower. UTMC, for those people who don't know and for those people who do, was a structure, a framework, an architecture geared to originally making traffic management systems within a local authority context work efficiently and effectively and using modern technology and so on. So it was all about linking the bits of device that are on street to the bits of device that are inside the local authority's control room and making that work. And that worked brilliantly, actually. Yeah, thanks very much to DFT, as it then was DETR originally, for sponsoring this between 1990, whatever it was, 3 I think it was to start with, and about 2004 with some major demonstrators. I think it's fair to say that really got the market going in an integrative direction around modern technologies, around IP networking, all those things we take for granted now, and around structures of data exchange, which still remain relevant to the marketplace today. But funding did the thing that funding does, and policy did the thing that policy does. Governments do the thing that governments do, like change colour and so on. And it's been basically not technically developing for a decade or more. That's my honest perspective, and there we are. In the meantime, the world has not stayed still. And the message we got very strongly, I think, from this morning's session is that's not good enough. We still need to do traffic management locally, and we still need to have optimized approaches to doing that, but our job's changed. And happily, it's changed in a way that we kind of foresaw in the last stages of UTMC's active development, which is in 3 or 4 new directions. Firstly, it needs to understand more about non-straightforward traffic activities within a local authority. It's about highways management, it's about public transport management, it's about those things that can then be integrated in and communicated out to. Secondly, it needs to do much more to deal with new types of challenge, and what that means today, obviously, is things like CAV, connected autonomous vehicles, or connected automated vehicles, where there's lots of opportunity, and we heard from a lot of that in the spatula session this morning, because that stuff raises some very strong challenges and opportunities for traffic management itself. And the third area is publication of data and making data available both to service providers, to neighbouring authorities, to emergency services, and ultimately to the public about what's actually happening on the roads and what they should be doing about it. And UTMC at the moment does not have a sensible structure guidance approach to publishing traffic management data. So all those things need to be done. Clearly also we still have a large catalogue of technical stuff that's still probably largely relevant to the areas where it does apply, but we're not quite sure how much when. So out of this morning's session, we've come up with an agenda that consists of basically 2 things. One is, firstly, we agreed that it would be a good thing to do under the auspices of the TTF. The first thing is to go through our existing catalogue of product and see which is relevant, which needs adapting, which is now obsolescent, and to provide more active and targeted guidance to people, whether they be suppliers of product and wanting to think about the roadmaps, or whether they be consumers of product as potential purchasers, to say, this is our guidance as to how you now need to think about using different bits of UTMC. But then the second and more strategic bit is to open up these new areas and say, how do we reinvent the architectural structure of what UTMC was all supposed to be about, taking into account the new challenges of internal integration, of publication, and of new opportunities like CAVs. And all of those are needing to be required. So there is an obvious institutional aspect coming out of both of those. UDG, as it exists, is clearly going to be leading the development of guidance on what UTMC's current product suite looks like and how it needs to be evolved. But then the external links do need to have liaison with other organisations, and I've already spoken to people. Mark Pledel from Topaz was part of the session, so that's a given. I spoke to Gunny Dardwella on the ASIN links, so we got the vehicle angles there. I've spoken to Tim Rivet on Arctic, so we've got the public transport angles there, and I've spoken to Ian Knowles and his team on data. So we've got the publication side there, and all of those links need to be made and retained and developed over the course of the next few years, I suspect. So that's us.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for standing in for Steve, and it's great to see there is a lot going on in that space. There is a lot to do. Right, can I now ask Jackie Elliott to come and talk about your group, please, about masterminds, which is a great acronym, by the way.
Do you want me to do it?
You got 2 for 1.
Hi, I'm Jackie Elliott from Kent County Council. I'm the Public Transport Project Manager, but most importantly for this role, the lead for Mobility as a Service in Kent. Do you want to introduce yourself and then I'll
Sure.
I'll talk a bit more?
So I'm the James Bullen. I'm the Mobility as a Service Project Lead at Transport for West Midlands, and most importantly, we're stepping in for Adam Stead at Transport for Wales. So he chairs the group. He's done a lot of work behind the scenes, but had a newborn last week. So he said his wife would probably kill him if he had a day out. So that's why you have us.
Okay, so today was the first of the working groups that sort of, was actually here, which was absolutely lovely to see more people than we normally have. We established the Masterminders working group for local authorities at some point last year, I think it was. And it was all sort of online, and I was hoping that there'd be more of the original Masterminders working group here with us today, but unfortunately they couldn't make it. So what we did today was about sharing with other people, particularly other local authorities, about what we're doing, I've been planning for introducing Mobility as a Service to Kent for quite a few years. So I gave a presentation about that, but before that, James also gave a presentation on...
Yeah, on Transport for West Midlands and our plans. So we're hoping to contract award our Mobility as a Service supplier in summer. So lots of excitement around that. And then we went into a discussion, didn't we? We wanted to really blow the room open on these topics.
So we had 6 topics, and we didn't have enough people for sort of all the different topics. But the topics we wanted people to explore on the different discussion tables were about troubleshooting for mobility as a service, and sort of trying to get over some of the barriers and working out what the solutions would be, the roles that need to be played and the balance of that, and particularly sort of, the role of local authorities and how we should be taking the lead. Another third one was the commercials and how we actually make mass stack up and make sure it's a win-win-win scenario for everybody. So it stacks up not just environmentally but also financially as well. So that was the third topic. Fourth topic was nudge off, we called it, and this is about sort of, how we can incentivise modal shift. The fifth was about innovating innovation, because mass is already very innovative, but then how can we go the next step further? And the sixth was about data world and AR infinity. So we sort of covered 4 of those topics in the discussion groups. And the whole sort of point of being here today really is about to raise awareness of where our projects already are. So in Kent, we've only just recently got partial funding from the DFT to get a mass technology platform, whereas others are slightly ahead. So Transport for the West Midlands are a little bit further ahead with the procurement. And we also explained about Transport Solent, who have already procured a mass technology provider, and the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks they'll be launching their mass technology. So we're all at different stages, and it's just really to say that it is very much an emerging market in the UK, but mass internationally is already, there's got lots of deployments, and it's about learning from best practice around the world, particularly the Nordics and Europe. And I personally have sort of been doing a lot of sort of market engagement with technology providers from all around the world, and have seen really innovative mass solutions, and they are starting to make modal shift around the world. So we know it works from elsewhere, and this is about bringing it to the UK and making it happen, and it really needs the local authorities to be the lead. So really we're here to sort of spread the message that come and join the Masterminders working group. We'd sort of, very much appreciate more local authorities to get on board with the whole mass concept, and then we learn from each other. There's also opportunities for, say, Transport Solent have already procured their mass solution. Transport Solent are very interested for other local authorities to actually procure directly from them rather than going out to their own procurement. So there's sort of ways of expanding mass across the country in a quicker way to normal procurements. So that's sort of, I think, probably a roundup. Anything else to add?
No. Good.
Okay. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for doing that, and congratulations to Adam. I can't understand why he's not here today, but you know, yeah. And mass is an area that TTF hasn't really been involved in up to now, so it's great to see that group now within TTF. It's great to see that being shared among us. Another group that's very vibrant and has been doing an awful lot of work for quite a while now is the Smart Parking Group. So I'd like to ask Sarah Randall if you could come up and talk about what you've been doing, please. Thank you.
Afternoon all, I'm Sarah Randall. I currently am the Assistant Director for Parking and Traffic at the London Borough of Newham. Those of you who know me, I've grown up in the London Borough of Croydon, so that's where a lot of my experience has come from. In the group this morning, we had 5 different presentations followed by discussions afterwards. The prime one starting on the APDS, so standardised parking data, to try and ensure that what we ask all of our suppliers to do and the data that we can then provide to other people is standardised across the industry to simplify what we're doing. That's probably it in a nutshell. It's a lot more complicated than that, but actually just standardising all the data we have, whether it be from pay and display providers, our back office providers, or some of the apps that we use, and making that simpler in what we do. That linked into the next project that's been funded by the DFT, which is the National Parking Platform. If any of you are aware of the model that is in Holland, it looks at having a centralised platform that all providers of parking link into, and then local authorities are part of that in terms of, so it links pay by phone customers, pay and display customers, back office providers, anyone using parking data into the system. And so therefore, as a local authority, you wouldn't have to go through procurement, because as long as you've met that minimum standard, you can be part of the platform and provide those services into the local authorities or private entities that are part of it. So I've probably made that sound more complicated than it is. It's actually simplifying what we're doing, rather than having this huge spaghetti of lots of people providing lots of data into different places. It's actually making sure that as long as you meet the minimum standard, you can provide that parking anywhere. From a consumer point of view, which is probably where I always come back to, it means that whether I'm in the London Borough of Newham or Croydon or Westminster, I can use the app that I choose to use rather than what the local authority has chosen on my behalf, which makes it simpler. So you wouldn't need 7 apps necessarily on your phone, depending upon where you're going. Danny from Manchester talked us through the example, so they've been piloting it at the moment, which was really good. And then we had a brief discussion about the overall infrastructure and how that works, and moving it out of the pilot stage, looking at setting up a local authorities trading company to manage the platform moving forward so that people can buy into it. We then had a presentation by Arab about data and performance and how that links, particularly after COVID, and how we tie that all together. And then we had Appyway and Haringey in Yorkshire present on their parking model of integrating that using just one provider rather than the parking platform, and how that links into bay sensors and everything we do, so that actually from a consumer point of view, it simplifies the data, but actually means that we have data that we can provide to other industries, and we can manage parking and the transactions around that, and look at where we are maximising the opportunity for parking. And then the conversation, we didn't go this far, but it does link into how we tie that into things like emissions-based parking, and if the legislation changes, into dynamic pricing for parking, and move that forward.
Thank you, Sarah. I can't think of any probably any other area where we can make such an impact to people's travelling lives so quickly as in sorting parking out. So I think there's a huge amount of really interesting, important work going on in that group. So thank you. Right, the next group we're all here for this morning, Spatula, but I've included Spatula because I thought it'd be quite fun to see Gav try and distill this morning's discussion into a few minutes. So again, our second replacement, this should be Andy Graham, but he's not here. So a man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway, Gav Jackman.
Thank you. Sorry to everybody, I said that I wasn't coming up again. I wasn't planning to. Spatula Working Group, connected vehicles, connected everything. We came out of the closet today. We normally have 12 to 18 people at the working groups, and we had about, 100 or so that was fantastic. I'm not going to repeat what we said because hopefully everybody was listening. It was the beginning of the day, and therefore everybody was smart and energetic and full of intellect. I hope. I guess it's about connected everything, isn't it? And actually what we did show for 8 different presentations, there's a multitude of approaches. There's a lot of work going on, a lot of research, a lot of different stages. We showed some great videos which actually showed some real illustrations of the potential benefits and the systems and all the IT sort of stuff coming together. So I think that was one of my takeaways was that, not one approach fits. There's not one approach, and there's lots of different approaches to this, and they're not all wrong. They're all kind of right in their own way. And I think over time it will mature and it will kind of solidify and become a bit more mainstream in that way as well. Standards and application. An application of standards, I think, is really important, rather than just a standard for a standard's sake. I think that sort of came out a couple of times, maybe because I really believe in that one as well. I wanted to kind of summarise 2 or 3 more things. It's got to be about not just technology for technology's sake. I think it's really about the user and the benefit and actually what we actually get from this connected vehicle infrastructure, or vehicle-to-vehicle infrastructure, vehicle-to-infrastructure to whatever, all that connected sort of stuff. But actually, I guess there were several things other than came out. Virtually all of it was about making the car or motorised vehicle journey better. And I just wonder whether we actually need to go on a decarb diet, which may sound strange, bearing in mind we're all here about making, transitioning the network better. But actually, I think we need to think about that. And I think actually that should be something that actually comes across all of our minds, thinking about decarbonising our journeys and our commuting. But to leave it on 3 points, 1 point. 1 point, but with 3 different parts. With connected vehicles, we need to really consider not just the decarb part, but also equality. Somebody mentioned in a small little conversation about equality of users, be it gender, be it age, or be it social standing, if you like, well-being. So I think, for me, equality for connected vehicles is actually really important, and perhaps the biggest challenge. We overcome the technical ones because you can always do that, but actually can we overcome the equality challenge, which is, to me, the user, the society, but also the authority, because actually not every authority is going to have the same amount of budget or the same amount of resource to be able to roll things out that are required. So we need to really consider that in the way forward. So I'll leave that one with, it's a nice one to leave on, isn't it? Equality. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Gav. I think, as I said earlier, it's great to see with that group that's been running for a long while now, we are moving from vaporware and aspiration into actual stuff. People are showing actual things working, and we saw the work that George has done, KL Systems, actually making things work. We saw the work that's happening in the West Midlands. We saw the work that Si's been doing with apps. Some really good stuff happening there. I think it's a really, really vibrant group, that. Right, the last group is what was the TDI, which is now morphing into the TTF Data Infrastructure Group, are we calling it? Something like that, yeah. So I'd like to ask Ian Knowles from DFT to come and tell us about that.
Thank you. It was a meeting, really, whether we should have meetings to start off with. Great civil service start that. So I'm Ian Knowles, I'm head of data, head of stats at DFT. So what did we cover? First of all, I was super excited. It was after lunch, and we had lots of people turn up, and they were really engaged and really energetic, and that was wonderful. Data's a great topic. We started off just a bit. I did a little introduction on data journey in DFT and where we're going with a transport data strategy. I'll tell one anecdote I didn't actually tell in the group, just because it really resonated with me when I thought about it afterwards. I was in a meeting last week, one of our ministers. The meeting was about geospatial coverage of our data. Only me, no policy people, no particular agenda, just about geospatial kind of coverage. when I introduced myself, just in case they didn't remember me, as the head of data, head of stats, they said, wow, that sounds like the best job in the department. And actually, I think meant it. And it was like, if I look back to maybe 5 or 10 years ago and other jobs I've been in, would I have been told I had the best job in the department? Would I have been in a meeting talking about data with a minister for no other reason? And that was part, to me, of the data journey we're on and how much data now matters, which is brilliant. So anyway, aside. So covered the journey we've been on, the move to real-time data over COVID particularly, the Boris standing up at 5 p.m, showing you as the first thing he showed you what's been happening with transport. Lots of people in this room made that happen, so big shout out. Carla particularly, I know some things as well, really, really impressive, and that's left a really strong legacy of how we approach data now in transport, which is great. So that was like setting the scene. We did a couple of show and tells of some of the work we've been doing, so the development of a transport data catalogue, find transport data, a bit of a pitch for people to get involved in that as well, where we are with the TRO data model work, and what we've been doing on working with you all on guidance to local authorities about how to open up data, how to make data more accessible. So then the main purpose of the meeting, once we'd done that, was really getting the view of the room. What do we want to do? What would a data forum for the TTF look at? Did a bit of technology, so we did it on Menti, got some people to play around with their phones, answer some questions. As a statistician, got the real joy of seeing a distribution for the answers to the questions, lovely. And we came up with loads of priorities, loads of engagement. I'll just touch on a couple. So definite focus on data standards people want to talk about. A lot of interest in how we build the evidence base of just what is the value of investing in data, so that when in local authorities in particular you're trying to make business cases, how are we getting the pound value of why it's worth investing? So lots also about case study sharing, where we've got similar barriers, similar problems, how can we better share where someone's cracked it? And even could we go further and look at how we could support others to crack it? And then interesting point about technical skills and how we potentially could approach leveraging technical skills in where we don't necessarily have the money to just hire lots of people. So those are just some of what was a long list of things that we could look at. Key things going forward is tick, we've agreed we want a group, I think, from the level of engagement. We didn't actually conclude that at the end, but I'm concluding it now unless someone in the room wants to disagree. What we said we'd come back with is all the responses and comments we got, we'll send back out and we'll send it to the wider group, and an emerging list of priorities that we want to focus on first. What we don't want to do, and certainly pick this up in discussion afterwards, is just have a massive agenda talking shop. We want to focus on a few things at a time, see how we can crack them and make a real difference, and then basically start working through that over time. And that was it.
Thank you very much, Ian. I think that's a great relaunch of what was a great group, the TDI. And I think let's hope it has a great future. I think just to pick up on a point Ian made there, I think TTF has a bit of history here. Very early on in COVID, we started producing a weekly data digest with Arup doing the work for us. That sucked in an awful lot of data from a lot of local authorities. Many of you are here today. Thank you all for doing that. That was great. We are still producing that. We're still producing a data digest, and we still collect more local travel data now than we've ever done before. So a round of applause to you all for doing that. I think that's really good. Thank you all for talking about the groups. I think we are covering a massive amount of technology subjects there. I think we're covering a massive amount of areas of technology, a massive amount of areas of policy. Again, going back to that idea of how do we deliver policy by using technology, I think there's an awful lot covered there. If you think we are still missing something, if you think there's a big area out there that we should be addressing, then let me know, and we will think about that. But please engage with the groups through me, through the website, through Elcrig, and we will put you in touch with them. And if you think any of the groups are doing something that they shouldn't be doing, missing something they should be really involved in, again, let us know. These groups are for you. They're to help you think about the way through technology, so please help us grow them and formulate them. So, just to round up then, I would like to say, as I say, we had a very complex day with lots of meetings going on. I'd like to thank Jill and Suzanne and the rest of the Elcrig team for keeping us all on track. Should we give them a round of applause?